What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about operation queues, what they are, why you should know what they are, and most importantly, how to use them. So here we are on Apple's developer documentation page for an operation queue. It's a part of the foundation framework. And basically, operation queues are ways to regulate concurrency in iOS. So if you've seen my videos on Grand Central Dispatch or dispatch queues, operation queues essentially can do the exact same thing with some added functionality. So if you want to make a asynchronous background call or a main thread call, you can do all of that through an operation queue and then some. So an option of using operation queue versus dispatch queue is something which is a little subjective, but there are actually cases where you want to use one or the other. So firstly, if you haven't seen the dispatch queue videos, definitely check those out after this video, or maybe pause it and go check it out right now. But the biggest difference is operation queues are able to handle operation dependencies. And we'll take a look at what that means and what it is in just a moment. So that said, make sure you hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Hit subscribe if you're a returning viewer or if you enjoy other videos of mine. Let's get excited. Let's open up Xcode and let's dig in. Quick pause before we get into the video. If you haven't seen it already, I am hard at work putting together iOSacademy.io, a community where all of us iOS engineers can come together, learn how to build some of the top apps like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, in addition to interview prep to land some of these iOS roles at top tech companies. So if you're interested in the free and premium content to come, head on over to iOSacademy.io and enter your email address in the waitlist form, and you will be notified as content becomes available. That said, let's get into the video. All right, so here we have Xcode opened up, and I'm going to come up here and go to File, New, and we're going to be working in a playground for the duration of this video. And we can stick with the blank playground. And let me go ahead and call this OperationQueue.playground. Let's go ahead and create it. And let me also expand this window to give ourselves a little more room to work. Awesome. So let's get rid of this default string that we've got in here. And we actually don't need to import UIKit. We only need foundation. So we could replace this to make it a little more clean and to the point. And let's talk about operation queues. So basically, to create an operation queue, you can just say queue is a operation queue. And you use the parentheses to call the constructor, and you've created a custom queue. So firstly, what the heck is a queue? So a queue is pretty synonymous to a thread in iOS. It's a little more abstract, but you should, every time you see a queue, you should think of it as either a main queue operation, so any UI updates, or a background queue operation, so any asynchronous task like a network call or something else you want to run in the background. So you can, of course, create custom queues that are run in the background, or you can reference the main queue. So here we've created a custom queue. Let's see how we get the main queue. We basically say operation queue, and I keep spelling it wrong, and we say .main. And this main property actually points to the main queue, and on the main queue you should update all of your UI. So actually I lied. Let's add import UIKit one more time here, and we're going to show some examples. So with if you're familiar with dispatch queue, you can use it to basically dispatch work onto different queues. You can do the exact same thing with operation queues. So here we can say if we want something to run on the main queue, we can say main queue add operation, and you can see that there are a couple of different options here, and the two that I'll call out that are useful. The first one is this one, where you can basically just execute some code in this block, very similar to dispatch queue. So in here, for example, we can create a label since we're on the main queue, or the other one, in which you can actually pass an operation directly. So in this case, it wants a parameter of an operation. So this introduces a new topic of how do you create an operation? So let's just call this operation for now, and let's talk about how to create one of these. And it's pretty trivial, actually. You can simply create an operation and use the parentheses to call the constructor like so. So that's basically how you create an operation, and you can add it to the given queue just like that. And similarly for the custom queue, you can actually do this exact same syntax and add your work on this queue like so by just changing the queue that you want to target. So in this case, you might be wondering, why do you want to use this approach versus the block approach, which definitely seems cleaner? And that brings me to the point of dependencies. So if you think of a scenario in which, let's say you want to fetch some user ID, and after you've got the user ID, you want to fetch the profile photo with the user ID. So let's say that's two different operations. So the first operation is going to be fetch ID operation. I'd say we have another operation called fetch user photo with ID operation. Basically, what we can now do is we can introduce a dependency graph to how our concurrency works, right? So what we can say is this fetch photo operation has a dependency on this other operation. So what that basically does, it tells the operation queue, don't execute this operation until this operation is completed. And essentially now what we can do is when we add this to an operation queue, let's get rid of that. Let's add that right there. The operation queue knows that this is dependent on this completing. So that's how dependencies work. And that's honestly the biggest reason that operation queues are preferred over Grand Central Dispatch or Dispatch Queue, right? So with Dispatch Queue, you can definitely handle dependencies, but it's far more easy with this since it's kind of baked into the API for you. So it's a pretty popular interview question too, GCD versus operation queue. So there's the answer to that. The other thing that I'll mention, the two other things, is operations in an operation queue have different states. So if we go off of this operation here and we go onto this, so there's start first of all, and I think there is a current state on here. It might not be called state. Okay, so you can actually check it directly. So you can see is canceled, and there are these various states you can check. So an operation, as opposed to a dispatch queue call, you can check the state, right? So is ready, is finished, is canceled, is executing or in flight. You can check if it's concurrent, asynchronous, so on and so forth. So for example, let's say you wanted to request some data, and once the data is requested, you want to cancel it for some reason in your app, right? Maybe the user navigated away. You can do that pretty simply with an operation and the cancel call that is available to you right on this. That'll cancel that operation for you. So that's basically how that works. The other thing that I will call out here is you can actually configure your own custom operation queue to do exactly what you want it to do. You can actually specify the max number of concurrent requests on the queue. So you can say in this case, custom queue, and if we can spell it correctly, we can actually provide a value for max concurrent operation count. And let's say we want to limit this to, I don't know, 30. So whenever we go ahead and add an operation to this queue, let's say by using the block format, let's use this format. This concurrent max limit here will limit the number of calls to 30 at a given time. So let's say we add 40 operations to it, 30 will run concurrently and it'll queue up the other 10 to start executing once there is room as others finish up in the current 30 that are running. So operation queues give you a lot of control over the nature of the concurrency as well as access to states and current things like if the request is in flight, things like that. So definitely a handy tool for concurrency in general across your app. The last thing I'll mention before actually wrapping up is, for the most part, most apps are going to be using dispatch queue. The reason is most logic does not have intricate dependencies that really warrant the use of Operation Queue. Operation Queue is considered to be a bit heavier, and actually under the hood, Operation Queue in fact is implemented in GCD, or Grand Central Dispatch, otherwise known as dispatch queue. So you can think of Operation Queue as an abstraction on top of dispatch queue. And that's about it. There you have it. That's a quick primer and overview of operation queues, what they are, why you should care, and how to use them. If you haven't hit the like button, please make sure to do so. Helps out the video and channel quite a bit. Comment any questions, concerns, suggestions. Love hearing from you guys. Hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I will catch you guys in the next video.